Everyone thinks the world is split into clear sides. America versus China, Russia versus Ukraine, Iran versus Washington, Taiwan versus Beijing. That's the public story. But the documents show something much darker. Everything is being traded. Look at the last 3 days. Look at how quickly the board is changing. Taiwan's president says his island is not provoking China. He asks for a new US arms sale. And Reuters reports the real reason why Taiwan is so nervous right now. Trump had described Taiwan arms sales as a very good negotiating chip with China. Stop there for a moment. This is a democracy of 23 million people. A possible invasion target, a global chip hub. And its weapons become a bargaining chip. That is not a clean alliance. That is a raw transaction. But then, look at Iran. Look at the shift in the Gulf. Trump thanked China's Xi and Russia's Putin for being neutral in the Iran war. Neutral, China condemned US strikes on Iran from the very beginning. China's independent refiners kept buying Iranian oil during the conflict. US officials assessed Beijing supplied Tehran with goods with possible military uses. But Trump still thanked Xi. Ask yourself, why did he do that? Because China did not escalate enough to break the oil market. That is the hidden rule of the superpower market. Not good, not evil, just useful. Now let's bring in Russia, the next piece of this global market. For months, Russian oil became awkwardly useful because Iran and Hormuz were disrupting supply. Then the Iran deal eased pressure. And Reuters reported the US quietly allowed a waiver on Russian seaborne oil sanctions to expire completely. So Russian oil was tolerable when Iran squeezed the market, then punishable when Iranian barrels looked ready to return. That is not principle, that is oil arithmetic. And Ukraine is watching this in real time. At the G7, Zelensky tried to show Trump that Russia was not winning. European leaders wanted tougher sanctions. But Reuters reported Trump stayed non-committal. He said Russia should make a deal. Should, not must, not will pay, just should. Now ask yourself, what happens when the order starts to break? If Taiwan weapons are a China bargaining chip, if Russian oil pressure depends on Iran's supply, if Iran's war becomes a market management problem, if Ukraine's sanctions depend on oil prices, then what is left of the rules-based order? What remains of the rules? Look at China's role. China buys Iranian oil. China buys Russian energy. China pressures Taiwan. China controls critical minerals. China watches Ukraine's drone war for lessons. It doesn't need to own every battlefield. It only needs to sit inside every supply chain. Every single one. That is Beijing's leverage. Now look at America. Look at the other side. America still has aircraft carriers, sanctions, dollar power, intelligence networks, weapons pipelines. But it is using them differently now. Not as clean commitments, as tradable pressure, raw leverage. Taiwan arms, Russian oil waivers, Iran blockade, Ukraine sanctions, China talks, all connected. This is the new superpower market. Sovereignty is priced, security is negotiated, everything has a cost. War is packaged as leverage. And smaller countries are told to be grateful they were included in the deal, grateful for a seat. Ukraine becomes a pressure card against Russia. Taiwan becomes a negotiation card against China. Iran becomes an oil card against inflation. Russia becomes a sanctions card against Europe's fear. China becomes the buyer, supplier, and threat at the same time. And America becomes the broker, trying to trade one crisis to manage another. A delicate balance. But here's the twist, the one they forget. Nobody is fully in control. No one. Iran can move Hormuz. Russia can keep bleeding Ukraine. China can squeeze minerals. Taiwan can refuse surrender. Ukraine can strike Russian infrastructure. And America can discover that every chip has a will of its own, a mind of its own. That is the part empires forget. People are not poker pieces, not at all. Nations are not casino tokens, and wars don't stay inside deal rooms. The truth is, the next global conflict may not start with one declaration, not just one. It may start because too many leaders believed they could trade one country's security for another country's temporary calm. So, should smaller nations trust superpower guarantees, or is the New World Order just a marketplace where everyone's sovereignty has a price,